let's start off with a fun one. It was the Game Informer Street Fighter 6 coverage. I remember I used to get Game Informer like every month because they I think my mom accidentally signed up to it one time at a GameStop, and I liked them, so I actually do have. I think, yeah, if you go back and watch the Girls of Gaming episode, I have well, I think I just pulled out one, but I had like a big stack of them from over the years, and so I've always kind of had a soft spot for Game Informer. Like I always loved their covers. They always had like sometimes it would just be, here's a render from the game, but a lot of times they would get some nice artwork for the cover story. And this is another case where they got a nice. It was very. I guess the main selling point of this cover story was they were delving into Ken's development in 6, and so there was just a cool kind of, that sort of, not quite painterly, but sort of graffiti style, but really dark and muted cover of Ken. I liked it a lot. So there was a couple things that they went into. The Ken stuff is a lot of it was stuff that I just kind of feel like most people just sort of figured, but it was one part of multiple multiple things from their coverage. There is one funny bit from this article on the preview of Ken's new look. Excuse me. Or how do they describe it? A deep dive into Ken's new look from the Street Fighter 6 preview. That's what it was. So they're talking about. I remember when the design first went out. People were like, oh, what did they do to Ken? And I was never worried because that, like, okay, I completely understood once, because, like, honestly, I think you can go back and hear my original reaction to the roster leak. I thought Ken just looked like a dad. I just thought he looked like a dad on a Sunday, and he didn't want to get dressed or shave. He didn't strike me quite so much as the hobo Ken, she took the kids Ken, that a lot of people interpreted that as. So, a lot of, I guess they were more right than I was, because yes, he is going through something, but that wasn't it. It wasn't, he hasn't lost the kid. There was that fake leak about how, like, his son is in the army or something. It's like, his son shouldn't even be like a teenager by now. I don't know what that is. But once it became more apparent that they were Ken was going through, he was having a bruh moment. More than a moment, honestly. More like a bruh season. I was really not concerned at all. Because I was like, I understood immediately. I was like, okay, Ken hasn't really had anything to do in a Street Fighter game since, like, Alpha. Like, he got married, and, like, or 2, I guess. Does he get married in 2? I forget which one that happens. The point is, it's been a long time, and they haven't come up with anything for him to do besides, he's started a company. Okay, that's a development, but it's not really like any kind of conflict, There's all these other characters having these crazy conflicts, and then Ken, who's like a marquee character of the story, or of the franchise, Guile's got this whole thing with Charlie and Bison, and Ryu's got this whole thing with Akuma and the evil energy, and Chun-Li becomes a fucking cop and shit. And she, what does Chun-Li even do? Oh, honestly, a lot of characters get wasted in Street Fighter V's story, but Ken hasn't had like a conflict in a while. So I was like, okay, they're gonna give him something to go through, and then at the end, he's gonna have a big comeback moment, and it's gonna be cool. The only thing, like, in writing, the putting a character through a conflict like that is just a setup. Unless they're gonna just really wallow in some misery porn. And it's just like, yeah, no, fuck, he's fucked. Ken fucking fills the bath and grabs the toaster at the end. Unless it's that, which I highly doubt. It's just a setup for them to have a big comeback moment and have a big triumphant, like, oh, fuck yeah. It's just gonna be a setup for them to have a cool moment. So I wasn't worried at all. And then when more details came out, I was like, okay, I'm not... It'll be... Maybe he's not quite as disheveled or on hard times when it was like, oh, he's been framed or something. So there's this, like, funny bit from the article. Because everyone knows, like, okay, it seems like he got framed for something. So they don't say it specifically on the website. They just said, like, accused of a crime or something like that, or like when accusations about him come out or something. So it's like, okay, they don't call it, they don't say he did it, they just say he was accused of it, which basically means that it's false. And like, okay, it's a perfect setup for a character to go on some kind of a journey and still keep their I doubt it's gonna come out that Ken was like a using child labor or something like that. He's still gonna be a cool guy. He has to beat the accusations. And there's this funny moment in this article where the heck was it? Despite the various hints dropped during my time at Capcom, the studio remains tight-lipped on the specific narrative reasons Ken is in this perilous state. Quote, for players who start up Street Fighter VI, they can expect that Ken is now on the run from something, and he is not able to see his son Mel for unknown reasons, Nakayama says. He's in a tough situation that you'll learn more about in the future. And then you scroll down a little bit, and it's literally a screenshot from the arcade mode of Ken being arrested, and it's like news footage that says, who's behind the terrorist bombing? Questions surrounding the champ. Like, fuck, oh boy, I wonder what the reasons are going to be. I wonder what the plot is going to be for Ken in this story. There was a terrorist bombing, and there is a link to, or he gets framed for it. No, that would never be it. Like, really? Why are you acting so coy about this? You just showed. I also love that it's like, it isn't like, I was expecting something like, oh, something was stolen or some kind of embezzlement or some kind of a white collar crime. They just go with straight up terrorism. Just like fucking just straight up domestic terrorism. Months after their own president got shot to death on the street. I'm sorry, Shinzo Abe's ghost. Dude, it would be so funny. Oh, I hope that the reason Ken gets arrested is because Reddit linked him to the bombing. I hope that's what it was. I hope we did it Reddit. What would be like the in-universe? They couldn't use Reddit. They would have to, what would it, Reddit is like, I read it. Besides reading, oh, said it. I said it. We did it, said it. That would be so funny. I hope that's what it was. I hope it was some fucking... Actually, the story, if you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, back in... What year was it? Was it 2012? The Boston Marathon bombings happened. So there was some domestic terror incident in Boston where some bombs went off, and no one knew who was responsible. And there was a subreddit created to try and deduce who it was based off of surveillance camera footage and all that, and like, okay, where were the bombs? What are the details that we know? And a lot of it, to be fair, there's a good video by the YouTuber, I think it was Wavy Web Surf. He has a great channel on things kind of like this sort of historical internet things, like weird internet history stuff. He does a lot of videos on that, and he did one on this incident, and basically what happened was that on this subreddit there weren't so many people actually making accusations of people who did it. There were like rumors and theories, and people were actually surprisingly restrained. Until, and then what happened was that supposedly credible journalists from like actual news publications wanted to get ahead of the story. I think it started with like one of those like National Enquirer or just those fucking, rags type of publications. They wanted to get ahead of the story before anyone else, because that's, in the case of a horrible terrorist bombing where like real people died and were injured at what was supposed to be a fun event. What you really want to do is you want to get the get the scoop. Don't wait for information. Don't be responsible. No, dear God, no. Look at Reddit. Hey, skim some Reddit posts. Who do they think it was? And they pick up this story and just fucking run it with zero fact checking. And it's like the cover story for their like you see at the grocery store or whatever. And there's like this, they falsely identified it being these two. It was really bad because it was these two Middle Eastern high school students. It was like Omar and something like that. Because it was two guys with like clearly like, non-American names. I probably born here. Like I'm assuming their parents were like immigrants or something, and so they gave them like more. It's that thing, like first generation. When they come over, they obviously have names from the homeland, and then they name their kids that, and then the grandkids are like, I'm Jeff. That kind of thing. So they had these very like ethnic sounding Middle Eastern names, and the Daily Enquirer was like, yeah, it was fucking these guys, and they were just two guys. They were just two kids. They were just like high schoolers who were there because they were like track and field athletes or something, and their fucking faces are just on the cover with like it's just so bad. It was like and it wasn't even like suspicions. It was like these two did it, and it was 100% not them. And then there was like another like couple just random names that were getting thrown around that other reputable journalists pick up. Supposedly reputable journalists picked up. I think one from BuzzFeed and then one from like the Washington Post or Journal, or I don't know who, New York the names, these names always get me twisted, and they ended up like just one guy. There was like this name that it wasn't even a confirmed person, and this one BuzzFeed guy's like, it was this guy in a tweet, and then all these other supposedly more reputable news publications pick up on the tweet, do zero fact checking, and then just start running the story that it was that guy, and it was not that guy. In fact, the person, because I think it was like a dude who went missing or something, and his family was looking for him, and people thought that he was just like a potential, like, oh, this guy went missing. He was like supposed to be there. No, it turns out that guy. Does YouTube not like it when I say killed themselves? I do not like it. He threw himself into a river and drowned himself like a week earlier. Ooh, that's awkward. Yikes. Sorry, that guy's family. You had to find out like that. Um, yikesers. So, and so there's just all these fucking, imagine being the family of this person who, like, you just want to know what happened to, like, your brother or your son or something, or your cousin, and you're like desperately and then it comes out, people are like, think that he's a fucking terrorist, and it turns out no, he did this, you know, really, really unfortunately took his life like a week earlier. Like, fuck. And now people think he's a terrorist, and you're getting phone calls telling you that your dead son was a terrorist. Oh. So we did it Reddit. It's not an entirely accurate meme. It's actually a case where the blame lied more on the established media for doing zero fact checking and being a bunch of hacks. So I imagine. So that's what I'm saying they should do with Ken. I think it would be really funny. Oh god. Oh my god. Could you imagine if fucking they have a bit in game and it's like, and it's a similar kind of just like shit rag newspaper, and they're like, was it Rashid? Questions surrounding, is he a prince? What does Rashid do? I forget what he does. Questions surrounding the top tier. Oh my god.